If you get lost in playing a game, suddenly you start paying attention after 2 hours, and suddenly you've learned all the gestures of VoiceOver on the iPhone.
Please welcome gaming enthusiast and writer Aaron Spelker.
A game developer of a new game that just came out just a couple weeks ago. It's called Beyond the Chiron Gate.
Creator of the popular Facebook group Apple, iPhone, iOS, Voiceover Compatible Games.
There's actually some really interesting stuff that's happening now, with some audio description that is starting to happen in games.
Now please welcome Aaron Spelker. We hope you enjoy.
What games are going to be coming out in the next 2, 3, 4 years that incorporate some of this accessibility conversation.
Welcome to Blind Abilities. I'm Jeff Thompson. Today in the studio, we have Aaron Spelker, and he is an enthusiast about mobile accessible games, especially on the iPhone. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Aaron, thanks for reaching out, and I went and searched I've been stalking you a little bit on social media.
Yep.
What a resource you have for people to go to, especially on your Twitter at AM Spelker. Just go there, people, and you can find all you want. It's really bustling with activity there.
Yeah, I tried to create the resource that I couldn't find when I first went blind and was hoping was out there. I'm a lover of games. I wanted to play games. After losing my sight, I was looking for what can I play? And I just was having a real hard time finding like a list of these are accessible games that you can play. And so I ultimately decided to just go out on my own and start curating that list so that it would be easier for other people to find, that are coming behind me.
And you do Aaron Spelker on YouTube as well.
I do, yeah. That kind of, as it grew, as I kind of, started reviewing games. So I have a Facebook group, and that Facebook group, I send out weekly reviews of accessible games. So it's kind of a long form review. It tells you about, what is this game? Is it fun? And then, here's how accessible it is or isn't. And it gives it a grade and, a link right to the App Store so people can download it. And in that process, I started getting to know various developers and starting to talk to them. And I decided, well, as opposed to having these conversations where I'm learning all this great stuff and having this wonderful experience, why don't I record this and then be able to share it with the community so that they can get a more direct connection to the developers as they're trying to create accessible games.
Well, even on Facebook, you got a group there, Apple, iPhone, iOS, Voiceover Compatible Games. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, well, again, I don't know anything about creating Facebook groups, and I'll just put in all the keywords. This way, if you're looking for VoiceOver, you find me. If you search Apple, you find me. If you're looking for iPhone, you find me. Hello, and welcome to the Apple, iPhone, iOS VoiceOver Compatible Games. I was trying to just give people lots away, but it is a mouthful. I probably should have thought that through a little bit better.
On your YouTube channel, I know another one just dropped today, but Jesse Anderson, he's a local here. He's been on the show. He's big into gaming. Illegally Cited is his site.
Yeah. Working on accessible gaming. We have Jesse Anderson from Illegally Cited. Jesse, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, I've been branching out to do, kind of influencers as well, to kind of, people who are in this field looking at games, people like Jesse who are reviewing a game or doing walkthroughs and playthroughs and, explaining how to navigate the accessibility of things. I mean, they've been really wonderful conversations. Those are some of my favorite because they're kind of plugged into everything, you know what I mean?
And on Sundays, you do a long form version.
Yeah, on Sundays, every Sunday on the Facebook group and on Twitter, I post a link to a long form review of whatever game I've covered that week. So we now have over 90 games that have been reviewed across a wide variety of genres, which again was very important to me as I was creating the group. Was like, I love RPGs, but if I did a group that did nothing but RPGs, there'd be a lot of people who there wouldn't be a game for them. So we've covered dozens of different genres of games to just make sure that, whoever goes to our Facebook group, they will find something that they enjoy, whether that's RPG or letter games or Sudoku or, whatever the case may be. I want to make sure that there's something for everybody on that Facebook group.
If someone was interested in, say they haven't thought that they would be able to play a game because of the accessibility, what game would you suggest to a newly blind or someone that's just coming into vision loss?
Oh, newly blind. I would say start simple. Until you master the gestures of VoiceOver on the iPhone. I think gaming is a great way to really hone those skills because you get immersed in the game. So you quickly learn what gestures you have to do. Start simple with a letter game, a word game, a crossword game, even something as simple as, Hangman or something, just to get the gestures down. once you get the gestures down and you kind of understand that, I mean, really kind of everything is open to you. I mean, there's 2D adventure games. If you really get advanced in your skill set, there's 3D adventure games. One game, if you like RPGs and you want something with a lot of depth, there's a game called Swordy Quest, which is an RPG. You fight dragons and monsters and go collect loot and collect resources and manage all that. That's probably a little bit more on the advanced side. I wouldn't necessarily start with that if you're newly blind and newly figuring out the voiceover. But, again, a great game, once you have that skill set, really kind of immerses you in that world. And it's an experience, a good game with good accessibility. You can have the same experience as a sighted person who's playing that game. And I think that's really what really excites me when I think about accessibility is the games that do it well. I'm having an experience just like anybody else who's playing this game, whether they have sight or not have sight. And that, to me, is the greatness about the developers have been putting forth accessibility and making their games accessible.
As you stated in one of your writings, you said it takes away the thought of being disabled.
I do articles. I write for pocketgamer.com around accessibility. And that was one of my first articles for them. The one that you just referenced there was talking about gaming and how gaming can be kind of a solution or help combat some of the anxiety and depression and lack of socialization that kind of is much higher in the blind and visually impaired community. And through gaming, there's a lot of things that allow us to combat those things, that allow us to connect to other people, that allows us to feel accomplishment and achieving a goal, by reaching the end of a game or gathering the achievements that are in the game. It gives you a sense of purpose. So a good game that is designed with good accessibility can allow a blind person to get engrossed in that game and kind of forget about the struggles of the day, the struggles of being visually impaired or disabled, and get immersed in the game and help them combat, a lot of the anxiety and lack of social connection. Games can really help them deal with some of those mental challenges that we have through gaming.
Yeah. I know some gamers and they're sighted and they didn't even know there's a pandemic that happened, hardly.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was the first game that got your interest? I mean, you probably started out playing Atari when you were sighted. What led you to the phone?
Going back my early days as a child, I was an Atari 2600 type of person. And, I had all the consoles, through the PlayStation 4 and lover of big open world games, Fallout and Skyrim and The Witcher. Those were all games that really took up the majority of my time. Last of Us, another one. And I went blind. I had an accident 3 years ago where I went from fully sighted to blind virtually overnight. And after a few months, when I kind of started getting my feet underneath me, I said, well, I love games. I really enjoy them. What game can I play? I started by going to what I knew. So I went to Last of Us Part 2 had just come out. I said, oh, okay, I'm hearing there's all this accessibility. I'm going to play Last of Us Part 2 and it'll be just as great as playing Last of Us when I was a sighted person. And again, I give Naughty Dog all the credit in the world. I mean, they did something amazing with all the accessibility efforts that they put forth there. But for me, it was a very different experience. It was that playing Last of Us Part 2 as a blind person and playing Last of Us as a sighted person were virtually two completely different experiences.
My son had the game and I said, let's check out the accessibility. 2 hours later, we're still going through the prompts just to make sure we're getting the best that we can. And I was playing and he says, he's pointing a gun at you. And I said, who? And I was like, oh, you're dead. I was like, well, I can't see that. I can't see something. It was really interesting, crawling under buildings, automatic jumping and lunging and stuff. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, and for me, it was, I think there was a lack of connection. And there's actually some really interesting stuff that's happening now, with some audio description that is starting to happen in games. We have Reese Lloyd.
Cool. My name is Reese Lloyd. I'm the studio head for Descriptive Video Works. The company is solely focused on audio description, or what we in Canada call described video.
And I think that's what I was missing. I was like, okay, I'm jumping over something, but I have no idea really what that is or what that is in context. Like, I need someone to describe to me, what is this set piece that I'm traversing? And that's, I think, the part that was missing for me for Last of Us Part 2 was I don't feel connected to this experience. So I put down the console controller and I said, well, where are there games to play? And, did some internet searching and, mobile games kept coming up, and particularly a game called A Dark Room. And that is the first accessible game that I played as a blind person. I sat down and tried playing A Dark Room, and it's kind of part resource manager and then part kind of moves to kind of has a little twist in the game and then moves into kind of an RPG type of experience. And it really kind of hit with me like, okay, yes, I can have a fun experience. This is fun. I'm enjoying this. I don't feel dissatisfied. Like I kind of had that feeling with Last of Us Part 2. This is a gaming experience I can have and I can enjoy. And what else is out there? And when I went out and started looking like, okay, where's the big list of all the accessible games? That's where I was not finding a big list. And I was like, how can there not be a list? And after complaining for about a week, I said, well, maybe I should start the list. And, off I went. The Dark Room was the first game I reviewed on the site and haven't stopped for the last 18 months.
There you go. So you lost your eyesight 3 years ago. What was the first step in gaining access to your computer again?
I live in Massachusetts, so I engaged the Disability Commission for the state, and they sent over a person to load JAWS onto my computer and, gave me a kind of a crash course in JAWS and to try to learn how to navigate my computer because I learned by doing. I kind of picked up a book idea that I had kind of thinking about writing a book for 5 years, and I had done all this research, and I said, all right, well, I have a lot of free time on my hand because I'm blind and I'm not working. Maybe I'll sit down and write this book. And so that's kind of, I took the little crash course they gave me in JAWS and started writing in Word, and that's pretty much how I learned, for the most part on my own for about a year, how to navigate the computer. And then about a year after I was blind, I took a little 2-week crash course at this place called the Carroll Center for the Blind in Massachusetts. And that gave me kind of some more advanced skills so I can actually run Facebook pages and Twitter accounts and stuff that I do now.
And you published your book.
I did, yeah. It's an interesting book. So I wrote it in 2019 and finished it in 2019. And it is about a global SARS pandemic that ravages the world in a matter of months. I finished writing it about 3 months before COVID-19 happened. And then COVID-19 happened. So it's kind of funny. Very many similarities in my book to what actually ended up happening in the real world.
Bubonic Reorder. I like that name.
It kind of has told in 2 parts. So the first part is about a family who is living in 1347 at the outbreak of the bubonic plague. And it's them trying to outpace, and get away while everyone's dying around them. And then the second part of the book is modern times. It actually takes place in the year 2020, if you can believe that. And it's about a global SARS epidemic that is spreading around the world. And it's about a couple different groups of people around the United States who are kind of dealing with that global outbreak. And one group is trying to find a cure and another group is trying to stay healthy, basically.
Mm-hmm. And that's how it is today. Almost just the same thing. You started something there. Actually, the bubonic plague, that really got my attention there, especially how you described a ghost ship, a ship everyone was dead just kind of sailed on in and people investigate, but they all died at the bubonic plague, and that's how it started spreading. The big spreader right there. Yeah, it sounded interesting.
Yeah, that ship at the very beginning of the book is coming from a port city called Kaffa, which is the thought of where the bubonic plague really started. The Tarta army had kind of surrounded the port and had used biological warfare. It's actually, again, one of the first places of thought of biological warfare. They had basically catapulted their dead soldiers who were suffering from the plague. They didn't know what they were suffering from, but they died, and they launched them in catapults into the city and basically infected the whole city. And, in fear, people jumped on ships and, sailed away, but they were already infected. And that's how it started spreading all through Europe.
Now, tell me about this. Over the last 3 years, the iPhone has come out with newer models and stuff. Have you seen an improvement in the gaming ability for developers to utilize the tools that are built into the iPhone?
So, as I talk to a lot of developers and some other accessibility influencers, it really depends on the basic tool set you've used to create the game. So there's particularly some of the Apple software to create a game where there's already some built-in accessibility. Those are a little bit easier to add in accessibility, harder in some other ways to develop a game, but from an accessibility standpoint, a little bit easier. There's other tool sets like Unity where the accessibility tool set is not great on that, and it's much harder, if not, depending on how you construct your game, impossible to add the accessibility in. And so it kind of gets not away from the model of phone per se, but those underlying tool sets to create the game. And we're seeing some advancements and some more focus on the accessibility. I mean, again, Last of Us Part 2 really brought to the attention accessibility. Got a lot of news and press, and I think has a lot of other developers thinking about it, and other maybe game design tool sets like Unity thinking about how can we support this now that it's everyone's talking about it. So I'm really more hopeful for where will we be 5 years from now, because I think the conversation has made it to the forefront, and now people are all actually focused on it. And again, it takes a while to create a game, so it's what games are going to be coming out in the next 2, 3, 4 years that incorporate some of this accessibility conversation.
I really like how you're bridging that gap and making it so people understand that, as you told me beforehand that there's actually a person behind developing this accessibility, building it in, creating it, and probably wants feedback. You know, like Charlie from Swordy Quest, he came on here, and you've talked to him on your platform as well. He really took a liking to it. He was telling us about Swift, how you can just turn on these accessible things, and he was looking for it. He wanted it to be that way, so he did that from the get-go, and he really built a really good game for the visually impaired. And just that connection that you're having with the influencers and the developers and people who can make a difference in accessibility in gaming, you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. I started by reviewing games, and I'd reach out to the developer and ask a question, before I put out the review. And I ended up just starting having conversations with different developers, and they were so interesting and fascinating, and they had such great stories. And I decided to turn that into different forums. Some are written, some are YouTube interviews, but I wanted to share that conversation with the underlying community. And also, again, have them in some way realize that there is a person behind, this game who is, usually a 1 or 2 person shop who's creating the game. And I want them to realize, they're working really hard and they're doing their best. And, let's have some sympathy and empathy for them as they work hard to, meet the demands that we're requesting. Today, we have one of the gaming accessibility influencers. We have Liam Irvin. Liam, welcome to the interview series.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Today, we have one of the best out there. We have Brandon Cole, who is an accessibility influencer. Welcome.
One of the best. Wow, what an introduction.
A game developer of a new game that just came out just a couple weeks ago. It's called Beyond the Chiron Gate. The developer's name is John Aliff. And John, welcome to the interview series.
Hi, thanks for having me.
A return visitor in Joe Quirk, the developer of Circus Master's Revenge, a team from Greeky Games, who is coming out on Sunday with their new game called To the Dragon Cave. And then just having them better be able to communicate, know what the developer is looking for, or feedback that they're looking for, so they can effectively communicate with various developers about, what are the things they're looking for and how that might be achieved.
Yeah, I always treated it like you're running a beta. These games that are accessible, if you find problems, have a great communication line going when you do complain about something. Not even complain, bring their attention to, I should say.
Yes.
And that relationship that you develop can go both ways, and it's going to help everyone.
Yeah, no, as you said, let's not complain. Let's inform. Maybe you don't realize this button is not labeled, so can you please label that button? And again, we got to understand, as you said, it's a beta, it's a work in progress. It's not going to come out flawless. And there's some people in the community who get very upset, like, it's not perfect and therefore I'm upset, but it's never going to be perfect. And no game is perfect. Even games for sighted people aren't perfect. Let's just inform and give them a chance to update or correct. And I think we're all better for that.
Aaron, where can people get a hold of you?
There's a couple different places. So as you mentioned, there's my Facebook group. It's got a long name. So it's the Apple, iPhone, iOS Voiceover Compatible Games Facebook group. So you can find me there. There's about 1,500 people in the community. Like we said, there's game reviews every Sunday. There's usually interviews every Wednesday that are posted out to that group. I have a Twitter account, as you mentioned, which is basically my name. It's A for Aaron, M is for my middle name, Michael, and then Spelker, Spelker. I kind of use that for more like news about accessibility. So I'll retweet other people that I'm following. So I'm follow, dozens and dozens of accessibility people in various games. So I'll retweet their stuff, as well as inform you that the game reviews are out or the interviews are out. I write articles for pocketgamer.com. So if you search my name in pocketgamer.com, you'll find articles about accessibility out on their website. And then finally, I have my YouTube page where all the live interviews, those are conducted on YouTube, and you can find me there. It's just my name, Aaron Spelker, and there's probably about 20 developer and accessibility influencer interviews that are out on the YouTube site.
What's your mobile game taking up the most of your time today?
Right now, and it takes up a lot of my time, it's a game called Lost Faults. I'm working on reviewing that game, but it's like this very in-depth RPG, many levels. And usually with a game, I try to finish the game. I don't think I can finish this game, but I try to get very deep into a game before I provide any sort of review. So I've been working on this one for months now, like 2 hours a day playing it. And there's actually some other accessibility influencers. We're in a tribe together on that group. I've interviewed them, and now we're kind of friends and gaming together, which is nice and it's fun.
All right. Collaborations. I like that. Be sure to check out all his sites, and you can stay in tune with all the accessibility coming to gaming, whether it's on devices, everything but a console, right?
Yeah, I do have mobile games. So it Primarily it's mobile games. I will tweet some news about other things that are about accessibility, beyond mobile gaming, but it's about accessibility in gaming at large.
Yeah, right there in your hands. There you go. I like that.
And for those who might be interested in my book, I also donated it to Bookshare. So you can, if you have a Bookshare account, you can download it for free as well.
Yeah, I'm going to throw all these links in there, and I'm throwing the links for Amazon and Bookshare as well, but you donated it. That's really good. So good stuff.
Yeah, the blind community has, I've gotten a lot of support, particularly through the Massachusetts services, and just other blind people I met have been very supportive to me. And so with the gaming group, it's all about kind of giving back, and same with the book. I wrote the book. I'm very proud of the book, but I wanted to share it with the blind community, because it was really the thing that helped me through a difficult time was writing that book. And, I just want people to enjoy it. And, if I can donate it for free to Bookshare, happy to do it.
I really liked how you said, this was a small part, but I like what you said about you learn by doing it. Like,
yes.
You had a book you wanted to write, so you had to learn JAWS to get to Microsoft Word and start writing.
And searching the internet to research stuff, and
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I learned a lot quicker than just someone telling me, and then I don't use it for 3 weeks and then try to do it. This was every day spending time researching and emailing and writing in Word, and I think it really advanced how fast I was able to pick up the computer.
The fastest way to muscle memory, right?
Yes. I feel gaming's the same way. Like if you get lost in playing a game, suddenly you start paying attention after 2 hours, and suddenly you've learned all the gestures of voiceover on the iPhone by just playing the game and doing it. And then you can apply that to doing your emails or searching the internet or whatever else you're doing. It's just a nice, easy way, a fun way to learn how to navigate your world.
Sounds like an educational component that could be built.
Yeah.
There you go. Aaron Spelker, thank you so much for coming on The Blind Abilities.
Oh, my pleasure.
Be sure to check out the links. Go follow Aaron on all of his platforms and get gaming.
Thank you.
When we share
what we see
through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap between
the limited expectations
and the
reality of blind abilities.
The realities of blind abilities.
Blind abilities.
For more podcasts with a blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com, on Twitter at blindabilities. Download our app from the App Store, blindabilities, that's 2 words, or send us an email at info@blindabilities.com. Thanks for listening.